This week's episode, episode 4, is all about bursting the bubble. That's right. We've had 4 weeks, some people 6 weeks of no commuting, spending more time at home, doing less activities and just doing more of family. And the simplicity and the joy of it, some people has made them rethink about their 9-to-5 life before COVID-19. For some people, bursting the bubble is going to be quite painful and they may actually feel comfortable in their bubble. Leaders are going to have to really think about how they're going to help and transition their team members from the bubble back to the office. Welcome, Anton, to Keep It Together, our registered psychologist that sits on our panel. We love the advice that you give us. And this week, we are going to be talking, it's episode 4, about bursting the bubble. Mm-hmm. It's what we mean by bursting the bubble, popping that bubble, is that people have not been commuting to work for 4, maybe for some people it's to 6 weeks, and they've been spending a lot of time at home, have had the balance of home and family and the simplicity of less, and therefore being able to focus on with kids and their partners. And it would probably make the average person reevaluate what that pre-COVID 9-to-5 work life was like. Some people might actually be comfortable in their bubble now, and the transition of having to go from that to back to the office or back to what was. What do you think leaders or business managers are going to have to deal with managing that transition?
It's a big question because there's a lot in there. The first thing to bear in mind is that we are essentially going through yet another grief cycle, because for some people they'll have now got into this new habit, and to then go back to the idea of working as normal, business as usual, is going to be quite threatening. However, for other people, they are going to be chomping at the bit. So I think the big thing for leaders right from the off is to realize that you're going to have a real spread of reactions to coming back to business as usual.
So when you say a real spread of reactions, do you have to acknowledge that this transition is going to happen, or deal with the fact that there is going to be a big spread? Because I know that a lot of people will be just wanting to get the wheels going for business and productivity. But if you don't do something about it, what are the possible consequences?
That you are going to end up with resistant staff members, people who are going to either get into that fight, flight or freeze mode that we've talked about before. They're going to fight the change. They're going to pretend the change is fine and it's not really, or they're just going to get a bit stuck and feel overwhelmed and confused again. So from a leader's point of view, it's so important that the people that you're working with feel as though it's a journey that you're doing alongside them. And there's a great model that can help in terms of how to support people rather than to make them feel threatened. And it's called the SCARF model. So when you're negotiating, have you heard of the SCARF model before?
I've heard of it, but I can't remember. Yeah. So tell me.
Okay, so the SCARF model, very quickly, is that when we are in a threat state, we can be very sensitive to social threat. So if we're being told what to do, that can challenge our status, which is the S part of SCARF. If we are given lack of clarity, that challenges our certainty. If we're, again, told what to do, that challenges our autonomy. If we aren't working in collaboration with the other people, then that can challenge our relatedness. And the final one is that if it feels as though somehow other people are getting a better deal out of this than I am, then that's going to challenge my fairness. So we need, as leaders, to be able to really think about who is the person sat in front of me that I'm trying to encourage back to work, and what do they need from me specifically to work so that I'm supporting their SCARF, so that they feel certain, they feel that their status is being recognized, they feel that they're on the journey alongside with me, they feel as though I'm connecting to them and I'm getting them, and it feels as though what I'm offering is fair and reasonable and realistic.
So the S for SCAR for status, did you say?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, these are tools that, whether you like it or not, a leader needs to understand that you're most likely going to get back into the office a resistant workforce in some way.
Some people will be absolutely loving the idea of coming back. And other people, especially if they're on the autistic spectrum, or they've got people very, very, they like they're more introverted, they like their space and their private space, they're going to find it really, really tough. And from my point of view, I think this is an amazing opportunity to be much more inclusive and think about diversity and neurodiversity, different ways of thinking, and tailoring our business model, our working life model, to what works best for people. Because if we create a new way of working that is a balance of the old and the new, then we're likely to tailor approaches that are going to work much better for more people.
Look, I absolutely agree. And so so you're saying see it as an opportunity, actually, and of that opportunity, when people are popping the bubble, talk it through with them, recognize where they may be, with the scarf model, okay, and actually talk through ways of working for them, so they feel like almost easing the re-entry back into the workplace for them. And the win-win for you is you're going to get a much more engaged, productive team and hit the ground running to face the unknown.
Yeah, an example that I'm working with one company at the moment, and they're going, well, we want to bring people back into the office full time, but maybe we need a longer interim period of we're giving them 1 day a week. And actually, if we don't make it prescribed that perhaps this 1 day a week might work better for everybody, but we'll have a testing phase and see how it goes, rather than just going, well, we're going from where we are now and ultimately we're just going to go back to working 5 days a week. So they're giving themselves that space almost to test it and see how it works and who it works for and who may benefit from it and who may not. Because the company I'm working with, there's a couple of people who we know are going to be brilliant, and there's some people we know that if they work from home, they're going to find achieving their goals and their tasks, their work-related tasks, more of a challenge. So it will be, again, working out, is there a way of supporting them so it works out best for them? But it's putting in that sort of new way of working, and it's an amazing opportunity to test it. And it's not again, does it work for everybody or doesn't it work? It's who does it work for and why, and who doesn't it work for and why, and what can we learn from that? So
in terms of, if you're going to put a transition plan, first of all, be prepared that there will be a spread of emotions.
Yeah.
Spread for emotions. Work through the journey with people and understand that some people may feel some resistance or we feel threatened. So that will be, the scarf model that we just spoke about, and understand what works for different people at their best, and look at, I love that, testing what this new workspaces could be for people, and understanding who it works for and why, and who it doesn't work for and why.
Yeah.
That sounds like an amazing transition plan we could do in 5 minutes.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Anton. It's just nice to be able to understand the mechanics of what's going inside people's brain, and being able to sort of apply it straight away, some strategies to apply and get on with it, because I think that's the general vibe that we're getting in the business and the workforce. We just want to get on with it, but you do have to obviously take people with you on that journey.
You do, and it isn't about just putting in new systems. It's about thinking about the whys and the whats and the hows in a bit more detail before you just go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to as well talking to you episode 5 Now that the bubble has been broken, the clear demarcations of work life, were pretty hard for people. And we'll talk a little bit about boundaries, and they've been blurred, and how do you come back from that as well to be business ready.
Yes. All right. Well, lovely talking to you again, as always, Lena.
Okay. See you soon. Welcome back, Natasha Tucker. You are my favorite organisation leader, development coach.
Thank you.
I love segueing from Anton, who is your business partner at Divergent Thinking, who is the registered psychologist, and then to you. So I feel like I get what's happening inside the brain, and then I get the action plan. And today's action plan that I need advice on is episode 4, is about bursting the bubble. Very much around, hey guys, we've been living in this bubble 4 to 6 weeks. Some people have adjusted to it. It might even be comfortable, safe for them now. And a lot of reflection's been going on with that 9 to 5 work life before. And now we have more family time and more reflection time. And it actually could be quite painful for people to be popping that bubble. And the pain, for some people they might really like it, but the reality is leaders are going to have to deal with, as Anton said, a spread of emotions that are coming through, and also a spread of ways of working that people may want to do. Some people may want to continue working from home a little bit, and businesses may want to accommodate that, or may not be able to accommodate that, or want to accommodate that. So tell me, what if I'm a leader and I've got a team? It doesn't have to be a big team, but I've got a spread of emotions and ways of working. What I need to do to put a transition plan in place?
That's a good question. I think the first thing is to find out what your people are thinking, how they're feeling, because like you say, everyone's different, everyone's feeling different things, which makes absolute sense. But actually, before you even are able to understand how they're feeling, there's a real need to create true psychological safety, because people aren't going to be honest with you right now when you look at the amount of jobs that have been cut. The people have been working from home. It's worked for some, it hasn't for others. They may not be feeling as productive. They may have struggled because they've been helping with schoolwork. You made the comment that people have had more time. Some people maybe haven't. I've been really busy. So everyone's been on a different journey. So in order to find out how everyone's feeling, we'll be building a relationship with your staff, because they're not in front of you, around true psychological safety, so that they feel that they can be honest, so that they don't feel, if they are honest, that they might get their jobs cut, or their hours might be cut, or they're the first ones to go. So, that is first and foremost. And that's not something I've seen a lot in organisations, and that's one of the reasons I love working with Anton, because he has the true ability to do that. So that's first and foremost, is if leaders need the skill to create an environment where people will be honest, that then sets them up to have conversations where, they could be saying, if I gave you a magic wand, what would you like your job to look like going forward? Personally, I can't wait to go out there and be interacting with more people, but other people don't want that. They're loving where they are right now, and they're probably going, oh my goodness, I don't want this to change. This is my happy place. So getting an understanding of where each person's at is the first starting point, so that then you can we talked to a couple of organisations who are looking at splitting the teams going back, and some of them are looking at just splitting it rather than at finding out who's most suited to go back, who isn't suited to go back, what other challenges do they have, and that's where something like we do with the survey to find out what it is people need and want enables the leaders to actually truly understand and start making decisions with some data, and I don't know if the right word is shortcut the process, but at least really know what people want, rather than doing stuff and pissing people off because you're making assumptions. And they are, everyone has been through so much change to not feel heard or connected, and to the next stage could make matters worse, potentially.
And look, it sounds like you're saying, okay, if you don't have psychological safety, you need to almost leapfrog that process a little bit. And
with some development for managers.
Yeah. And one way of doing that is, obviously, I love that question. If we could wave a magic wand, what would that look like? Asking that question.
That would be the second thing to do. They need to create that psychological safety first. So I think for the organisations, it's thinking what relationship, even doing a survey, like we have a survey, or a survey that actually finds out, an anonymous third party where people can be honest and know they're not going to get thrown under the bus, will give people the data, which is what we've had companies have realised their staff are more stressed. They knew they were stressed, but they didn't realise how much. So to know how your people are feeling, as well as, I would pick a majority of organisations would probably need to develop their leaders around psychological safety, because that's not something traditional leadership tends to do. It's from where I've been in organisations, there's a perception that because you're in front of me, you're doing your work. And there's a trust, but there's not true, honest conversations going on. How are you feeling? It's more transactional around, how's your project going? Where are you up to? It's all measurement orientated. It's not, how are you feeling right now? What do you need from me? So it's creating that first will then enable you to have conversations where you hear what they really do need, because they feel safe, because it's not just about output or input. It's actually around, it's around me, because me being the best I can be will enable me to do the best I can for you, the organisation, the team, and then making decisions from those discussions collaboratively, because right now we're feeling quite disconnected being at home. So it's all around how do we collaborate and who wants to be in the office and who doesn't, and then how do we make that work for everybody. So it's not a short thing. It's possibly going to be a real challenge for some businesses, understandably. It's changed the way of work, literally.
And also too, which gets to the second part of it, is that if you have established psychological safety, you can then easily graduate to some really good, honest, direct conversations. You guys, what do you call them? Radical candor.
Yeah, it's so radical candor is around having honest conversations where you both know that you're coming from a point of wanting the best for yourself and for each other, where you're committed to getting the best outcome. But that's where the psychological safety is so important, because if you don't go in with the concept that I know you want the best for me and I want to do the best for you, and there's a tug of war, then you're not going to get the best possible outcome. If someone's trying to protect because they don't feel safe, you're not going to get radical candor. And that's one of the challenges of people working from home is, when I talked about some more traditional management around, I see you, I tell you what to do, I feel comfortable you're doing it. The challenge of working from home is I've got to build a relationship to know how you work best and to listen that you might not function the best first thing in the morning. So maybe you don't work first thing in the morning and you work later in the day. But I know that you're going to get, because that's how you work, and we've agreed that if it's possible, it's not going to be possible for everybody, but if it's possible, then we are listening to the internal workings of ourselves, our actual well-being, the balance aspect, and I know, so it's giving care with accountability, like, sure, let's do this. And, if you're accountable and I get the results, perfect. If it's possible, that's, one of the key things as well.
And I think the big flag for me that you've raised is, guys, you can't just go at level 3 or whatever stage that you may be at to return back into the office. You can't just, pack your stuff up and let's just get back to where it was. You really need a plan for bursting the bubble. The team leaders need a plan. And you need to be honest within your organisation what your shortcomings might be. You may not actually currently have a psychological safety plan or leadership program. And if you don't have one, what could you do and put together? And more importantly, one of the things that Anton was saying is do a lot of, before we even get to radical candor, and is that talk to people and ask them what works for their spaces. And get, like you said, I love the data. If you can get that data and then take on people's feedback, take the data on, and then you can have some really good conversations about what's working for people. And like you say, there has to be some openness and caring around and commitment around, hey guys, it may not be the way it was before. It might be 0.8 of a person, and in the office, and then the rest is at home, and both parties need to feel comfortable with that.
Definitely, absolutely, and I mean that some companies have already been looking at the future of work, and premises which might only have 0.8 of the FTE in the office, and so this is an opportunity that shook it up. And I think you're right when you think about the transition back. If you're even if you, as a family, you're looking at moving house, how much thought goes into that? The planning and the packing and the booking the movers and the, getting to the next house, unpacking, the planning, and that's pretty huge and disruptive for a family. So we're looking at that from our work perspective, 40 hours a week or whatever it is you do. We got everyone out fast, and it went amazingly well because we went from level 3 to level 4 in a heartbeat, and it was pretty successful. But wow, it was successful that a lot of organisations are functioning well. They're getting stuff done. I'm not sure how many have a true feel for how their people are feeling, which is again why we've put together this third parties feedback tool. But to get that understanding of how they're feeling is helpful, because right now you're going to move them back in, and as you said, as Anton said, some people they're like, yay, bring it on, and others are like, oh my goodness, I don't want this. But I also think there's a transition phase, but then there's also, thinking about it, there's the phase after that, because when you get to whatever space you're in after this, there's going to be a phase for some short, some long around, so what does this mean now? Am I traumatized? How was this whole journey? Your adrenaline can be up with the things that you're reacting to or how you're coping. And then suddenly when you go to, right, this is over, I can breathe now, some people could well fall apart if they don't have the right support systems in place. I mean, because some people have been at home for 5 weeks on their own. What support have they had? It's a longer term thing. Like, people are talking about the economy is going to take time to recover. I think we really need to also think people are going to take time to recover and adjust. And we need, having the psychological safety will enable the honesty, because sometimes just getting it out there pops the bubble, bursts the pimple almost, rather than bubble, considering where we are right now. And it can relieve the pressure just talking about it. But if you're not doing that, or if you don't have if the organisation's not thinking of what we can do to cater to all the different types of people, get back in the office and it could turn to shit anyway, which isn't what we want.
Yeah.
It's a huge opportunity. I mean, the organisations we've been talking to have been saying that now people want to be connected. They're missing the connection. They want to be part of something again. And it's like, well, how do we bring them all back well so that it has the best possible outcome from it? It's a great opportunity.
And I love that actual thought. You're so right. We really need to not just think about the economy recovering, but how people can recover. And that is the question we need to be asking. How do we bring our people back well?
Yeah. Because that's how the economy will recover well, is by our people coming back and doing it. Like, it's our people. So yes, definitely. And it's such a cool, that's the thing, we're not siloed. There's communities that have come together. It's like, let's take that and run with it and not be like it was before. That's my perspective.
Yeah, and I think, and it's almost getting them into agreement of that, because like you say, is there'll be people like you and I who are like, yeah, great, let's get on with it, and this is the brave new world. And there are other people who are like, yeah, I'm not quite ready for that. Or tell me what this world looks like. I actually think, and I'm hoping, as Anton has spoken about, the SCARF model and understanding how people, they'll be going through that. And if we have psychological safety, is what you're talking about, and have radical candor. Also, Jerry Bell is speaking a little bit about the process that people have gone through, using the SARA acronym with shock, anger, resistance, acceptance, hope, and healing.
How they're feeling. Yeah.
And I think if people could apply a lot of these things that are coming out of Keep It Together, it will contribute to helping people return back well. And I really appreciate the thoughts, that the sentiment that you're saying is, we just need to get people to recover as well, help them to recover. Yep. For episode 5, we're going to be talking about, while the bubble has been broken, is recognition a little bit about the demarcations of life and work-life balance have gone, and about a lot of boundaries that were blurred. And so again, going back to, people may not be well, and then what does that look like in this new way of working? And then again, those demarcations might be moved again or forever if they do some work from home as well. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with you on episode 5, The Bubble Has Been Broken. And thank you so much, Natasha. You are seriously such a joy, because the balance of you and Anton, whereas he gives me what's inside my head, and you tell me how to actually do it.
Cool, that's brilliant. That's our goal, so that's perfect.
Thanks so much. I'll see you next episode.
Thank you. Look forward to it. See you then.
Welcome, Jerry Bell, to Keep It Together, one of our resident culture coaches.
Thank you, Lena. Good to be here again.
So you're joining us for episode 4, which is about bursting the bubble. And we have had 4 to 6 weeks of no commuting. We are spending more time at home. We are enjoying the simplicity of it, is what I've heard in my echo chambers. Less is more, more time with family especially. And it's made a lot of us rethink about this 9 to 5 life that we have been leading pre-COVID. And for some people, there's some trepidation about bursting the bubble, because it's actually been a bit of a comfort now that, in terms of the work-life balance. And the transition for that, some people have gone into, we've now gone in New Zealand, alert level 3, which means that you can do some transaction. It's all online. So people are going back to the workforce essentially. And some of essential workers, people can go, it's from school. I can go to school if they've got children. So what does it mean for leaders and workplaces and entrepreneurs when you have a workforce who's been in this shock of this bubble, dealing with that rhythm of that bubble, and now they're having to pop the bubble? What will that mean for leaders?
That's a very big question. I think immediately I'd rather see the bubble be stretched or relaxed than burst. If we think, what we've all been through, there's nobody alive today who has experienced anything like this. We've gone through a huge shift. As I mentioned before, there's a response model called the SARA response to change, which stands for shock. What's going on? I'm completely destabilized by this. The A is for the anger and the frustration that, why me? Why now? I don't need this. The R stands for resistance, which is I don't want it to happen. I'm going to try and ignore it or go on as usual. The A is for acceptance. This is it. How do I position myself? And the H stands for the hope and the healing as we come out of this. And regardless of where a leader is at in that, every human being within their organization may well be at a different place in a different way. So any organization, whether there's 5 people or 5,000 people, has to has to progress through this in a human way. This is about people, not about process. And what I've been talking about with some organizations is the biggest expectation, or the biggest need, is to relax expectations.
So that's what you mean by stretch. And you stretch the bubble with Sarah, which is coming to terms with the shock, recognizing the anger that comes from it. Resistance is,
I don't want this to be here. If you like, it's denial.
Denial, okay. Then you go through the acceptance of the process, and now you can actually start to look forward to the hope and the healing, right?
Yep, and there's a whole bunch of different emotions that are attached to each of those 4 divisions. The shock part may be horror. It may be all kinds of things. The anger and the resistance often play out as grief because, we are grieving the loss of stability, the loss of what life used to be like. The acceptance can also involve some grieving, but it might also involve some optimism. Depends, very much, I think, on the nature of the person.
So as a leader of a business, you have to recognize that people have gone through Sarah or maybe going through Sarah. I mean, how can you ease this stretching of the bubble, as you call it?
That's a challenge. A lot of businesses just want to get back on the tools, get back out there, get the factory going, get the machine working so they can earn. And that very much means that, the employee team may well be faced with, as of Monday, life looks like this and you will do.
Yeah.
I have a very strong conviction that is not how to do it. The organization needs to invest in the time in understanding where the team are at first, because some will be fine. Some will be quite buoyant. They'll be adaptable. They'll be versatile. They'll get back into it and it'll be fine. Others may have made major discoveries of themselves or the organization or the way they work, which will mean I don't want to go back to normal. And others may be deeply suffering. We know that in the last 3 weeks, particularly for those on the neurodiverse spectrum, those who have got underlying responses or projections, or what I call the ghosts in my machine, this will have triggered everything for them. It'll trigger their feelings of lack of worth, their feelings of isolation, whatever they're dealing with. This situation will have amplified that. And I think it is both unproductive and potentially heartless for a leader to tread over that and say, get back to work.
Yeah.
It's just not going to position the organization in a way to perform as well as it could if it takes the time to actually inquire of the people. So where are you? What are you feeling? What have you experienced? And what do you need? What do you need from me to step back into this functioning team? And that's where it comes in.
So, Jerry, do you think leaders need to be quite proactive with this? Rather, that's what you're saying. It's like asking the question, where are you? And this is actually recognize that 9 to 5 is a pre-COVID way of working for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at what we've all had to endure. After the shock of this virus spreading and arriving here, and then the country going into lockdown, we've had to learn how to work at home.
Yep.
How to deal with the constant presence of perhaps partners and children and flatmates, or how to cope with feeling very, very lonely. We've had to get to grips with different forms of working and communication, video conferencing. We've had to work out how to communicate, how to function, how to be productive under all of this. And at the same time, manage the spectrum of feelings, because our emotions are always changing based on both the thoughts within us and what's happening outside. So anxiety, worry, disbelief, if I've got family or parents I can't get to, all of that. And I think just to flick a switch and expect us all to reassemble almost as if nothing has happened is an absurd fantasy.
Because there will be organisations who will have a staggered return from people's bubbles. And so, like you say, no one's going to flick a switch straight away, and it's going to be the way it was. Obviously, leaders have also gone through this bubble as well, so they'll have the benefit of experiencing that themselves, right?
Yeah.
So, do the bursting the bubble is like what you're saying is take charge, acknowledge that people have gone through this emotions, but you also have to start planning what the conversation, have conversations about what your organization is going to look like, this new order, isn't it, for your teams and that. So you are going to have team vision planning as such. And more importantly, you're saying don't bury your head and ignore it like as if things are going to be the way they were. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. I think there will be two streams. There is what I would call scenario planning, the sheer functional mechanics of the business around cash flow, overheads, expectation, markets, demand, supply needs to be properly evaluated, probably over more than one scenario, because we don't quite know how long this will go for and how the world will shake out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as I'm saying, you've got to be able to check in with your human beings. You've got to show empathy. You've got to show connection. And you've got to show the willingness to listen and adapt. Because if somebody says, I can't do it, and your response is tough, do it, that's not going to work for anybody. So we've got to work out, going back to basics, how do we re-engage on a human level? And that's, again, as I spoke in an earlier episode, the 4 pillars of culture around establishing and maintaining trust, establishing a rhythm where we have routines and rituals that worked remotely and will need to work in a transitionary sense right now. And then communication, communicate. And through all of those, you establish connection. And the connection that I have with my business, with my employer, is the primary driver of, do I want to be here? How much do I care about your success? And in order to do that, almost on a daily basis today, even again before COVID-19, employers need to deliver value to their employees. And that value is not just financial, it's a social value. It's a social equivalence, it's a recognition, it's a validation, and a developmental value.
And Jerry, on top of that, you are going to have it's this marketplace of people who, the re-entry from outer space, essentially, back to Earth. It's going to be bumpy for some people, right? But there are some people who don't probably want to be there. You may have a workforce of a lot of people who aren't wanting to be there in the way, in the form, and the shape that they had been before, right? So what you're saying is a little bit like, check in with your human beings, okay? Check in with the layer, the landscape of human beings that you have now. Re-engage, with them by building rhythms and rituals to make them feel like they can, trust, to build trust, okay? And over communicate, which you say as well. And it's really important having that empathy, and all because that way you will be closer to what you actually want when you're running a business. And that is just the machine's pumping. Is that right? You've
got to take a long-term view as a leader. Yeah. And it is all about transition. We were forced into the transition into lockdown. The lockdown meant we were forced to transition our working functionality, our working styles into remote working. Now we're being hauled out of lockdown into another transition, which is whatever level 3 and level 2 entails. And people get tired of change. Change fatigue is a thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people I know have been saying, I don't know why I'm so tired. I haven't been doing much work. I've been hanging out with my kids. I've been walking the dog, but I'm emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
Because I think underneath all this activity, our subconscious mind is still processing.
Yeah.
We've been having really strange dreams, apparently. A lot of people I know have been having broken sleeps, and I think our entire being responds to the trauma in a very tangible way. But it will be different for many, many people. We're not the same creature. So leaders have to understand it. And I say again and again, you've got to go at the pace of people.
Yeah.
Expectations. Expectations right now are dangerous. They're dangerous for the business because the potential is that it's a resounding failure. They're dangerous for your people because, again, you will compound their feelings currently, if you like, of feeling unproductive or feeling insecure. So go at the pace of people. And that means checking in, asking questions, conduct a survey. There are, I know already, surveys out there that have been created in the last 2 weeks that you can buy pretty cheaply and run through your employees, complete with an analysis that goes through not just the obvious responses, but actually what do we think are the emotions and the thoughts and the needs beneath the responses. Then you need to structure the re-entry plan accordingly. Yes, have the mechanics of the business in play, but then pair that with the ability of your people to make that happen. Where is support needed? Where are the leaders? Because we know that in the last 3 weeks, companies have found people who they didn't think would be leaders. But these people have emerged as the ones with the caring, with the compassion, with the ability to deal with quantum change and lead others through it.
And Jerry, I think that really sums it up well. Bursting the bubble for leaders is actually managing transition and recognize that, checking in with your people, the pace of your people, because they've gone through so much change. Even though we've been locked down and not been active, our mind subconsciously has been very active, hence why, you're saying people are exhausted and they're just managing change, and that's difficult. So really advice from, Jerry Beale, who is Chief Happiness Officer at Tickled Pink. And, you do design leadership programs, health and wellness programs for cultures, is, the advice that you're saying is, hey, guys, for health and wellness, leaders, you've really got to understand what business you're in, and you're in the business of managing transition.
And if we do that in the best possible way, people will want to help the business get back on its feet. But it's about including them in the journey.
Thank you so much, Jerry, for helping me understand a little bit about what business we actually are when we're going back to the workforce. I was worried about the transition out of the burst bubble, but really it's how leaders manage and help people come out of that into the next process. I particularly love Sarah as well. So Sarah is the acronym for shock, anger, resistance, acceptance, hope, and healing. And that is exactly what we need to be talking about in our next episode, when we'll be talking about our boundaries when the bubble's been broken, and more importantly, how we can get on with hope and healing.
Awesome. Lena, thank you. See you next time.
Jerry. Talk soon.